At the beginning of the year 2021, Shelly has released Shelly Motion 1. Now it's time to look at the newly released Shelly Motion 2. We'll start in a couple of seconds. Unfortunately, as this video is recorded before the official release date of the Shelly Motion 2, I'm unable to show you the web page with the characteristics of the Shelly Motion 2. But we will be looking at that one and how to add it to Home Assistant. In my opinion, Shelly Motion Sensor 1 in this case is still one of the best Wi-Fi battery-powered devices there are. And I really wish there are more options and more devices like this one. If I'm not mistaken, this was also a first joint venture or first time Shelly was using Silicon Labs and actively developing this device combined with the Silicon Labs. And if you did watch the Shelly launch event for this sensor, the Silicon Labs guys were also presenting what are some of the challenges and what are some of the benefits of using that latest chip inside the Shelly device. But that's my opinion. My family, on the other hand, thought that this device is finally something that they see use for. It was located, and it's still located inside the kitchen, and it's running the lights 24/7 or controlling the lights 24/7, and they really love it. No more search for the push button to turn the lights on, no more voice control for the lights in the kitchen, they just enter the kitchen, the lights work, no matter if they're cooking or just grabbing something from the fridge. But after a year and a half, it's time for the new Shelly 2 motion sensor. The biggest difference between this smaller, newer version of the motion sensor and the old version is, of course, the size. This one is much smaller. The other question that most of you are probably interested is what is the blind time or what is the minimum delay between the motion detection. Unfortunately, it still is 1 minute. While I don't know what is the battery life of the new device because I've just been using it for the last 24 hours, I do know that the larger or the older version of the Shelly Motion device was close to 1 year as advertised here. Yes, I've never been able to reach the 1 year life of the motion sensor in my kitchen, but then again, that is the one of the most triggered devices in my home, even more frequent than the bathroom sensors. What is the setup procedure? Mine arrived almost full. I would still recommend that you hook it up to the USB-C cable and provide it with power, because that way it shouldn't go to sleep. After you hook it up to the cable, use provided pin to reset it or wake it up. And no, this smaller hole on the upper side is no reset pin. The one on the bottom side is where the button is located. Quickly press it, release it, and on your mobile phone select Shelly Motion and connect to that access point. When you are connected, go to the page 192.168.33.1, which is the standard IP address for all devices or all new devices from Shelly. Go to Internet and Security, select Wi-Fi client, tick the box next to it, and then configure your SSID and password for the Wi-Fi. If you are like me and you want to use the static IP address, now is also the time to provide the IP address, net mask for your network, gateway, and DNS IP address. After you've configured everything, press save and the device itself will reboot. Now we can visit the web page via the PC. If you've seen a Shelly device, you've probably seen this UI page. What we have here, we have information about the motion. If motion is detected, you will see it triggered here. You also have temper alarm here. If the device is tempered, you will see information here. The status of the built-in battery, the lux or luminosity sensor, and now we also have the temperature sensor. Depending on your settings and the lux values, it will be either dark or bright. If there is a firmware update, you will see these arrows, red arrows here. Let's go through the UI. Illumination definitions allow you to set what are the values for the dark or twilight. Since our value is currently 1000 lux, it's above twilight. If it would be 500 and lower, it would be twilight, and if it would be 100 or lower, it will then be dark. Motion sensitivity allows you to set your motion sensitivity. I think I also on my main setup or the old sensor I have it set something like this. As I mentioned, the motion blind time. This is the time after motion is detected, how long it needs to pass before it detects motion once again. It's currently 1, which is also the minimum value. Motion pulse count is used to detect or set up how many motions need to be seen before this is considered motion. I always keep this at 1. Motion detection operation mode will allow you to select if you will be using any, meaning that anytime the motion will be detected, but you also have option to use dark, twilight or bright, and only in these statuses the motion will be detected. Temper alarm sensitivity is set to 2. You can disable the motion sensor. Sleep time or pause motion detection for whatever seconds you want allows this device to go to sleep and to ignore any motions for set specific period of time. Temperature units can be set to either Celsius or Fahrenheit. Temperature offset allows you to tweak temperature readings. If it is higher or lower than it really is, you can use this offset to compensate and have it read correctly. And temperature threshold, same as we have also in the humidity and temperature sensor plus and the older version, is the specific amount of increase or decrease in temperature it needs to detect before reporting new value. Weekly schedule allows you to create weekly schedule timers. I myself am not using this and I'm really not planning to use this, at least not in the Shelly device. If I have any schedules, I will handle them inside the Home Assistant. Internet and security, like in all other devices, allows you to set up the Wi-Fi client, also the access point information. You can specify the password for restricted login, SMTP server that is used to configure time, MQTT settings if you want to set up MQTT, and standard values here are username and password if needed for the MQTT server, the MQTT server IP address, you can use custom MQTT prefix, you can clean the session, which I always leave as is, and of course save your settings. CoIoT, which is a preferred method for integration in Home Assistant, and while we are there, let's set it up. We will enable CoIoT and the remote address will be IP address of your Home Assistant with the port 5683. Let's press save. For these changes to take effect, you have to restart your device. And the last thing that you can do here on this Internet and Security page is enable cloud. But as I mentioned previously, I don't use cloud with my Shelly devices in my environment because I control everything locally. Local first. I'm not using actions, but if you are using cloud or the application from Shelly, or if you have some of your own services, you can set them up here. For each of those states, that's motion detected, detected in dark, twilight bright, end of motion detection, temporal alarm, end of temporal alarm, report sensor values over temperature, under temperature, dark condition, twilight condition, and bright condition. You can enable it and specify here the URL that will be called for that specific action. Of course, you also have ability to set up time when this event or when this action will be called. And the last page is settings for this device. It allows you to control LED lights. You can disable LED lights. You have option to update the firmware if the newer version of firmware is available, which is something that I will definitely be doing in a couple of seconds. Time zone and geolocation allows you to either leave it at automatic or set up your time zone and geolocation. And this is used to set up the time of the device, which is then pulled from the NTP server or Network Time Protocol server. But it's also used to set up the summer or winter time, depending if you have summer or winter time. We can specify the device name, which I will not be doing just now. Factory reset, device reboot, make this device discoverable, and also read the device information. Let me update the firmware. After I've set up the CoIoT, flash the latest version of firmware, let's go to Home Assistant and see if it is auto-detected with our Home Assistant. If we go to notifications, we can see that new device has been discovered. Let's check it out. And here we see Shelly Motion 2, which should be this device here. Let's press on Configure, Submit, and it was added. Let's add it to Loft and press Finish. And device has been successfully added to Home Assistant. If we compare this with the Shelly Plus humidity and temperature sensor, you will see a big difference. This device was almost 100% automatically added to Home Assistant. It is hot, it really is hot, but it's still not 999 degrees Celsius. We have information about luminosity, motion, and the status of the temper sensor, and everything else that we get for the Shelly devices, such as the name, official name, it's Shelly Motion 2 by Shelly, firmware, hardware version, and we can press here and visit the device. One thing we are missing here is the ability to see if there is a newer version of the firmware or not, and temper sensor also works. Unfortunately, since this device still hasn't been released, I also haven't received any additional information about this device. What are some of the major changes between this sensor and the generation 1 or first version of the motion sensor? So I cannot tell you what are the differences in, for example, the battery life or the accuracy or field of view for this sensor in comparison to the previous version. What I can tell you is the biggest difference between those devices is size, not the weight, because the weight is pretty similar between those two devices, but there is a difference in size. And yes, this device here is also using Silicon Labs processor inside, same as the first version of the motion sensor. And as you can see, adding it to Home Assistant is really easy and really straightforward. And yes, the temperature sensor itself is currently showing much lower values than before, but no, it's still not 39 degrees centigrade. Don't forget that this device is currently also charging, and it is heating up the internal battery, which may result in this higher temperature reading. Hopefully, when I unplug it and after a couple of hours, it will show the room temperature. If we compare Motion 2 sensor with the original or first generation of motion sensor, we can see that they have similar information. Its motion is detected or not, lux, vibration, or the temper sensor, but this one is missing the temperature sensor. Maybe having the temperature sensor inside this motion sensor is something that will be a tipping point for some of you to buy this newer version of sensor. Is it worth replacing it? I'm not 100% sure yet, but if you do not have currently any motion sensor, well, this generation 2 may be the sensor you are looking for. Before you all start jumping on my neck and telling me that there are some other sensors that people can use, let's look at it like that. If you have, for example, virtual machine running on some Intel NUC that only has Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection, and you want to add motion sensor to your apartment, you do not want to buy or currently do not have any kind of a hub or stick or anything, what would be the best solution to add motion sensor? Is it Zigbee or Z-Wave sensor? No, because those devices require either a stick or a hub to talk to other devices on the Zigbee or Z-Wave network. This one is using Wi-Fi. And there are a lot of people that prefer not to use hubs for whatever reason or sticks. Then this device is definitely for them. If you already have Aqara motion sensors, go ahead. I have at least 8 of them, and they are working great. But I also have Shelly Motion Sensor 1, and it's also working really great. As I mentioned previously, my family never ever mentioned my Aqara motion sensors that are powering LED strips, and each night when they go to kitchen or a toilet, they light up the room just enough for them not to fall down the stairs. No, they didn't ever mention those devices, but they did mention this Shelly motion sensor in the kitchen. So it all depends on what you want to use. There is no perfect device. Each device that fulfills your needs and suits the purposes for what you want them to do, it's a perfect device for you. It can be Zigbee, Z-Wave or Wi-Fi. And no, I'm not mentioning Bluetooth. I really do hope that you did enjoy this video. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give me a like. If you still haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell button so you get notified on the future video updates and of course the streams. And there will be a stream this Saturday, so don't miss it. If you have any questions or comments in regard to Motion 2, Motion 1, Shelly devices or something completely unrelated to any of the Shelly devices, you can always leave comment down in a comment section below. But you can also go to the Discord server and ask question there. And before I end up this video, I really would like to thank everybody who is supporting me and has become YouTube channel member. Thank you all for all of your support. And special thanks to Per, who has been supporting this channel for 24 months. But of course, I want to thank each and every one of you who has watched, liked or subscribed to my channel. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a YouTube channel member. And no, I do not have a Patreon account. And I'll be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.